right, let me get over here with the music. And here we go. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digital to Dice podcast. I am Dave.
I'm Ron.
And Ron, we got episode 211 today.
It's the information episode. You dial 211. We give you the 211 211 times for your sports simulation and replay needs. We answer questions.
What kind of information can you get?
So, if you needed like housing or water attached or some sort of local government function, instead of giving you a number such as Klondike 53333, you dial 211 and it connects you to a state or local resource that can help you with whatever it is that you need to help set up.
I thought that was 411.
There's a number of them. All the 11s now are hooked to some sort of service.
Because that was the cool thing, like in movies in like the 90s. It goes, here's the 411 on that. You know what I mean?
411 would be the same as if you dialed, what was the information number before? 555-1212?
I don't know. Maybe.
Someone's going to tell us that. And so if you wanted the 411, so if you were looking for my phone number before cell phones, you'd call 411 and say, Burlington, Vermont, please.
Neat.
And so 211 is for local information and such. So if you needed, let's say if you needed to, you already did your new fencing or whatever. But if you needed to know whether there was a main of some sort, like a gas main or a power line under there, you could call there and say, is it safe to dig?
Oh, I say, okay.
That sort of thing.
Interesting. All right, so this is episode 211. And ways to get a hold of us, digitaltodice.com is the website. That's digitaltodice.com. 978-751-DICE is how you can send us a text. digitaltodice@yahoo.com is the email. Over on Facebook, we have facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. And if you'd like to join us on our Discord, become a Patreon of ours over at patreon.com/digitaltodice. And we have a lot of good feedback from our Discord people who are our Patreons in this one here. We're going to talk about, do you ever get bored? That was the question we threw out. We threw it out on Discord. We got some great responses we will read, and also on our Facebook group. And, there was some very, very good responses to that question. Mm-hmm. And as what usually happens, Ron, is that, we'll have a question. And I really like the episodes that we throw out questions to the community. Yeah. Because you get the pulse of what's going on with the community. And, we'll throw out a question, and we'll have a pretty good idea of what we were kind of expecting for answers. But all of a sudden, somebody or a bunch of people will have some answers in a thought, in a way of thinking that we weren't even thinking about.
It's always good to have a different point of view.
It's like, wow, I wasn't really thinking about that, you know what I mean? But they'll come across with something that's really neat. So we got a few of those here as well, as, we'll be talking about, again, our topic is, do you get bored? And we'll expand on that as we get to our answers. So anyway, here, so we went over ways to get a hold of us. We had the intro. We talked about the 211. I think we can probably get into what we're playing. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Now, why don't you lead off today?
Well, my 88 baseball replay is off and running. And after a couple of Gardner games, which went on forever and ever and ever, now we'll never think of a 13, 14 inning game now without thinking of you.
I tend to attract the extra inning games. Usually it's me just like at late at night wanting to play something simple. And you put it the other day, we were talking, and you were like, why you like playing baseball so much? Because it's quick and it's fast and it's easy. It's like, you're exactly right.
Absolutely.
I love playing a full play baseball game because it's quick, it's fast, and it's usually pretty easy, except when it goes 12, 13, 14 innings. And you're just like, I just did this for fun tonight. I don't need extra innings, and so anyway, that's why.
For me, 12 innings is good. I can understand why, no hate mail for this, why we have the Ghost Runner rule now. I think you should go 10 before you get into it. But after the 10th inning, okay, it's time to wrap this up. I don't need to mess up my pitching staff and the AI's pitching staff for the next week. And I had last Friday, I had a 16-inning game, which I streamed.
Oh,
you're just going nuts after. It was
that's almost 2 full games.
Almost 2 full games. It's one thing when you actually say you're going to do a doubleheader, and it's another. It was Pittsburgh and San Francisco, I think. No, Pittsburgh and St. Louis. It was a home opener for the Cardinals, and it went 16 innings. And so the Pirates' relief man closer that year was Jim Gott, Gott.
Okay.
And pitch count, and Action PC, it gives you an expected pitch count if you're not familiar with that game. And you figure 15 pitches gets you 1 inning, give or take around that. They figured it out.
Okay.
So his pitch count was 25. So 2 innings if you're really efficient, which is about what he was. He pitched 4, and he threw over 60 pitches. Because they were out of relievers, and the computer rightly doesn't want to burn tomorrow's starter or the next day's starter or what have you to get through. You just go with it. And so St. Louis had some pitchers that weren't starting that series, so I threw them out there. And yeah, we made it to the 16th inning before third baseman, and I'm drawing a blank. Was there for not Francona, Terry Pendleton. Thank you. Thanks for the help, Dave. Walked it off in the 16th with a leadoff home run, which is exciting. But that game gives you a simulated time of game, and if
that's kind of cool. I like that.
You watch my stuff, and I'll say, so we played 3 hours and 5 fake minutes to do it. It was a 5.5-hour game.
They were talking about that on YouTube the other night.
So it started at 7:30 and would have finished after 1.
So they were talking about that. ID Jester had Sportsman Z on. Okay. And I was in the chat room listening to them. And that was one of the topics that come up was baseball and extra innings and ghost runners and how long it takes to play a baseball game. And there was a discussion. It's like, when you get to the playoffs and it's like these games are taking 4 and 5 hours. I remember back in the day, Red Sox-Yankees playoff games were 4 to 5 hours. They would start at 8 o'clock, and it was well after midnight, and these games are still going on. And just, so they were talking about the Ghost Runner, not so much postseason, but in regular season. And I was like, I think, you have to adapt, to society, and things are just a heck of a lot faster than they were in the 50s and 60s. And you can't expect people to sit there. You can't have people sit there for 3 or 4 hours for a regular season game. It's just now some people will, but for the most part, the last time I went to a baseball game, it was a minor league baseball game, and I was just sitting there. And after the first hour, I was all set. I was ready to go home. I saw my baseball. I had my fun, and here we are in the 4th inning. I'm like, I'm all set. I'm ready to go. I've seen what I need to do. And see what I came here for. And sometimes I'm the same with hockey games. I'll go there, and after a couple of periods, I'm like, don't know if I really want to stick around for the third. I've got my fill. I've been here for a couple of hours. Now I want to go home and relax and unwind and the whole bit. So to try to tie people up for 4 to 5 hours, you're asking a real lot out of people for that. So I think that they had to adapt. I know hockey and football have they've both changed their rules, and their games are 20 minutes or a half hour shorter sometimes. So
baseball cut down to 2:36 last season.
Yeah, so everyone's doing their part to fit in, because again, if you want an audience, people are watching, like I say, the 9-minute recap on their phone the next day. Why do I need to tie myself up for 3 hours the night before?
Exactly.
So
exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's fun every once in a while. It's fun to have one of those games that doesn't end, especially. You get to an hour and a half on the stream, but to sit there for 5 hours, again, the legendary story of the Mets and the Braves on the 4th of July with the rain delays and the fireworks going off at 10 after 4 in the morning, which, okay, that was 40 some odd years ago almost, and just the once. But so this week, we finally moved in the 2nd week of the season. RJL and I take very different paths in how we do our season replays. He'll zip through and take for a long time on the playoffs, and my playoffs won't start probably until September. We just just go through and take the back road approach. There's no wrong way to do it. I'm not saying that I'm right and he's wrong, but we both have very different ways of doing that. So we hit the 2nd week of the season.
Is there something in your eye? You were kind of like your eye was twitching and winking when you said that you're not right and he's not wrong. I mean, you were kind of. Were you winking at me, or was there something in your eye?
My eye itches, okay? God. Send your audition tapes to... Well, that's the one sound that plays through my speakers just fine, thank you very much. I can't hear the open or the transitions, but that went fine. All right. Now, see, I have no idea what you played there.
I gave you a rim shot. Good job. Good job.
I don't like you that much. So where was I? So started the second week of the season, did a doubleheader, and it's always fun to see April baseball because you're doing this. You see in the stats, and you got people hitting 545.
Oh yeah, that's nuts, isn't it?
You know, I got one guy that hit 2 triples all year. He played, and in the replay, he said 2 triples in the first 8 games. So the chances are he's not going to hit another one for the next 154. But it's always fun, and there's always surprises. So, to go the slow crockpot way of doing these things is that it's always interesting to see what stories develop early on and then just kind of go from there. Again, no wrong way to play that. I'm not being critical. Keep your cards and letters to yourself. So that's that for that. And if you're not familiar with how I do them, I usually do a game from the Wednesday part of the schedule, the Saturday afternoon old NBC game of the week. I really need to get an NBC banner. And I tend to do in a Friday game, tend not to be unless it's 2 blockbuster teams that were on game of the week, not to do that matchup 2 days in a row. So ideally, until we start to get in the second half of the season, it's 3 different matchups on a given week, just to throw things around. Granted, we're not doing the Braves and the Padres.
Well, I was going to ask you that. I mean, and I probably asked you this 100 times. Is that
right.
Early in the season? Okay, so you pretty much know what's going to happen that season because you're playing a replay of a season,
right.
blah blah blah. So you know who's at the top, in the middle, and what teams are really out of it. Do you ever do that? Do you ever say, okay, the Cleveland Indians finished dead last this year? And then the Minnesota Twins were dead last in the West, and they're playing. Do you ever play them early in the season to get them on the channel? Or are you just like, no, these teams are never going to see the light of day because they were terrible?
I always try to look at what the best given matchup is on a day. And so sometimes you might get one of those teams with one of their best pitchers. You get a matchup with 2 good pitchers. I like to go for that. The game tells you who the starters are. I don't necessarily need to look that up. It tells you that right there. Mm-hmm. But not necessarily, because during the later part of the season, because you never know who's going to be good and who's not going to be good, some of those lesser teams will end up playing spoiler down the stretch. And so let's say that Braves or Padres may not get an early appearance on the schedule before we get settled in, but they might have a game against the Dodgers or the Reds or the Giants in September that means an awful lot. Now, they're just playing out the string, but it means everything to that other team. And so even if one of the bad teams is at home, unless it's the Red Sox, I tend to play the home team. And so yes and no. I mean, I don't want to give a steady diet of Yankees and Red Sox. ESPN did so much of those 2 teams together that that people get sick of them.
Yeah.
Sick of, no matter the era. So you try to limit those. The other day I did Toronto, Minnesota, which I described as that was the absolute typical Bob Costas, Tony Kubek Saturday afternoon game. Wasn't marquee teams, but the Twins had just won the World Series and the Blue Jays are about to get really good for a long time. And so, yeah, that would be what I would want to watch. And that wouldn't be a Vin and Joe game. That was not a Scully Garagiola game. They're going to be off at Wrigley or whatever, or with the Dodgers. And so, yeah, I vary, but to me, it's not important to make sure that every team gets a play, because I tend to do things the way that I would want to watch them. I won't specifically exclude teams. If someone gets hot, it's possible for even the worst teams to go on a 7-8 game winning streak that they might get shifted. I will shift around games. I usually go 2 or 3 weeks in advance.
I like to like I'm doing my 79 replay, and I've played a lot of different games, and I keep saying I need to wrap that up, but I'm enjoying it so much I don't want it to end. Right. So I'll pull out a game and just play, whatever, strat, payoff, pitch. I'll pull out something that I have 79 in, and I'll play a game. And sometimes I'll stream it, and sometimes I'm offline. But I think the other day or a couple weeks ago, there was the two bottom teams. Whatever teams in the National League were at the bottom. I think it was the Mets and I forget who else. But I said, so I'm going to play these two teams. They're 20 games back. We're already in late August. They don't have a prayer, so I can't mess it up. No matter what I do, I'm not going to mess up their playoff chances. And I thought it was fun playing two bad teams. And like you said, I think there was a decent pitching matchup, a couple of guys that everyone had heard of. So I was like, damn it, I'm going to play this game. I'm going to stream this game. Can't mess it up because they're both out of playoff contention. And it was just fun having a Thursday night football game on, giving some teams some love that are kind of done, So I do that once in a while because I do like my bad teams. But it's just, I had two bad teams play. And
again, I'm not going to take an Oriole Mariner game over, let's say, the Yankees and the A's because you go through. And so, again, I try to be fair for if I do two American League games one week, I try to find two National League games the next week, especially the first half of the season. And I really don't the first half of the season I want 6 different teams in the games. After the All-Star break, all bets are off. If you got a 3-game set between the Tigers and the Red Sox and first place is on the line and it's a weekend, that Friday and Saturday game are going to be done because that's the story. I mean, it's all about stories. So, no, I'm not. If someone's actually asked for, and I'll probably do, they're going to have to remind me when the time comes. They want, since I'm doing 88, they want John Smoltz's first start ever with the Braves, and that's at Shea Stadium against the Mets. Okay, I'll probably do it if he reminds me because A, it's the Mets, and so people are gonna want to watch that. I just don't. There's no contractual requirement that I got to get everybody on. Mm-hmm. I do what I can. It's easier to do with the 16-team leagues because there's only 4 possible matchups in a given day in each league. When I did 49, we did everybody. I think we got the Browns on. The Senators were good early on, and so they got games that they wouldn't necessarily got. But when you're talking a 26-team league, it's 13 potential matchups on any given. The reason why I do Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturday afternoons is the Wednesdays and Fridays, everyone's playing. So it's the biggest spread of games. So, nope, I did the Cardinals twice this week. I can't do them again. That's just, again.
That might be an interesting question to throw out to the audience as we're talking about it here is that anybody out there that's playing, I don't want to say a full season because you've never been playing every game, but if you're playing a season out, and you're kind of jumping around from team to team to team, do you ever play the bad teams at all?
Well, tie this up with the other thing I've been playing outside of some freebie poker and Gems of War is doing 78, 79 Montreal and the Islanders. And so we're now up to Veterans Day in that replay. And as it's, 2 single team replays, you play everybody. And in fact, the last 2 games, the Canadiens, everyone cheer now in Boston, have lost to the Capitals at the Cap Center. Montreal had 51 shots and couldn't beat whoever Washington had in net. As Bunny LaRock let some bad goals through. I love it when the play-by-play says, "Oh, LaRock should have had that." Yeah, no kidding. Huh. And just before we started taping this, the Red Wings, which weren't great in 78, 79, go into the Forum and beat Kenny Dryden. And so in that, you get your taste of bad teams that way. And as frustrating as the Washington game was, and as frustrating as it is to lose to a team that you should be pounding, it happens, and it's fun, and you get to see everybody. So I think that for me, that kind of scratches that itch. Would I intentionally play the Colorado Rockies hockey team against the Detroit Red Wings? Not in a million years. It doesn't interest me at all. I can see you doing that and having a good time with it. Yep. But I think so. Yeah. again, we all kind of role play a bit on our channels, and I just can't even see NBC or Monday Night Baseball or even MLB in that era going those two teams, any two intentionally bad teams, unless there was a compelling story. If someone said, I tried to, and then let's talk about what you're playing. In the last year's replay, the 2001, someone said it's Cal Ripken and Tony Gwynn's last year. Can you do a game for each? They both were out of it the whole season. And so I looked, because yes, that is, their last year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think the one game I picked for the Orioles, since I never looked to see what the lineup is, Cal wasn't starting. I came in and had him pinch hit, but Gwynn only played a handful of games. He played early on, and I think he played the last couple of weeks. And the last couple of weeks pretty much we had that 3-team race in the National League East. So that's what I would want to see if I was that 14-year-old kid.
Yep.
So I think about it, but you never know when those teams are going to be playing important games against other teams. And so the short answer is no one's ever contractually obligated to be on, good, bad, or indifferent.
Okay, just wondering how you do it. I know people do it different. So
yeah.
Anyway, so what I've been playing and doing, boy, I went down a rabbit hole, and I'm continuing down the rabbit hole, and I did a little chat about rabbit holes. Somehow on YouTube, I've been really on a hockey kick with some of the videos. In fact, I just watched an hour and a half of 1970s Sabres hockey, where it talked about them joining the league and how they did all the way through, the 70s, their playoff runs and the coaches and the goalies. It was well done. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I stumbled on one on Minnesota hockey, which started with the North Stars coming in 66, 67, or 67, whatever it was, class of 67.
Yeah, 67, 68, the second six.
Yes, 67, 68. And then, it talked about the WHA, the Minnesota Fighting Saints, and the Minnesota Gophers, and then how they fell off and how it was, back to the North Stars, and it just, how rotten that team was, and all the guys that played and left, and how they came to be, and the merger with the Cleveland Barons. And it was 3 videos, and they both were an hour and a half to 2 hours each, and I ended up watching all of them, over the course of the last week or so, learning a lot about 70s hockey and going down that rabbit hole. But there was a lot of fights in the 70s, a lot more than I remember, and I don't know how they ever finished some of these games. We talk about the 5-hour baseball game. Well, some of these hockey games had a 30-minute to an hour delay just to sort out the penalties, on top of a 2.5-hour game. That's a long night, just sitting there watching the referees figure out who's kicked out of the game. And I've also gone down the World Hockey Association rabbit hole, and I started reading the book, The Rebel League. I dug that up. I have it on the Barnes & Noble app, and so I started reading that again. And I've been really enjoying playing WHA. In fact, I played a whole bunch of Hockey Blast Express one night with a WHA. I played some Stone Cold Hockey with a WHA. And then I pulled out Franchise Hockey Manager 10, and what I did with that is I put Bobby Orr on the Philadelphia Blazers. So in 1972, when the WHA started and Derek Sanderson went to the Philadelphia Blazers, we all remember that story. Well, their goalie was Bernie Parent. Bernie Parent went over to the Philadelphia Blazers. And so in my replay, Sanderson and Parent convinced Bobby Orr to play for the Blazers, and I just dropped him on. In Franchise Hockey Manager, you can just change the rights, and I dropped him on the Blazers. And then also I set up Action PC Hockey, which I'm really enjoying the new version, by the way, of Action PC
great.
Hockey. It is.
That's how I'm doing the Canadians and the Islanders.
It's different, just different enough than some of the older versions that I kind of like the changes they've made. I like seeing the cards come up in the whole bit, and it seems to be a little smoother. And so I did the same thing, put Bobby Orr right on the Philadelphia Blazers and playing that. And so in Franchise Hockey Manager 10, I tend to just simulate the games. I just don't bother watching them. I just kind of sim them and then make some changes. And they're like a 500 team, even with Bobby Orr. It's pretty bad how bad the Blazers are in Franchise Hockey Manager 10.
Parent was horrible that year. They don't have
it up, he is down the bottom of the list as far as goaltenders go. And
like 1.3 goals higher than he was the year before.
Yep.
And when he returned to the NHL the next year.
Yep, he had. Yeah, well, again, it was WHA was different players, and
Right.
I don't know how good that team was compared to others, but they weren't that good, even with Orr. What was really fun is that I played the first game. They played. I want to say they played the New England Whalers, and Orr had the first goal for the Blazers, and then 2 assists. Sadly, they lost 4-3 to the Whalers on opening day, but it still was a fun time. It was a fun time. Again, my Action PC hockey curse continues, where the first shot of the game went in on Perrant. So 1 shot, 1 goal. That's how it goes for me. But I've been enjoying my little trip down WHA lane, throwing Bobby Orr on the Blazers. I love doing that stuff there, is when I take a superstar and throw him on a team, and just to see how it would go, just for fun. It's a complete what-if situation, but it's been fun. So I've been playing a lot of hockey, Action PC Hockey, Franchise Hockey Manager 10, Hockey Blast Express, Stone Cold Hockey. I even pulled out In the Crease, and I was playing that, and what I'm doing with that is I'm doing 69-70 Penguins-Bruins. What happened if the Penguins beat the Blues and faced the Bruins in the Stanley Cup Finals?
Oh.
Yeah, and game 1 went to the Bruins 1-0. 1-0 in Boston. They squeaked out a 1-0 win over the Penguins.
Pitcher's duel.
Yeah, so that's how that was. And I don't know if Dave Arlington listens to the show. I know he saw my Hockey Bones video the other day when I was playing a playoff game between Vancouver and Buffalo. He commented on it. But he indicated that, I said, hey, Dave, we might need some WHA for Hockey Bones. That's the only game I got, the hockey game that I have that there's no WHA. And he said he was thinking about working on some WHA seasons for Hockey Bones. So that was kind of neat that he caught my comment and made a comment on that.
Oh, nice.
So we'll see how that goes this year, yeah. But anyway, that's kind of what I've been doing. I'm really going down the hockey rabbit hole between YouTube. And then what's been really fun is when you play these games now, you can put a face to all the cards on the table because you just watch them on YouTube and you have a better idea of what was happening and why this goalie was playing and why this goalie was not and what happened to this guy. And so it just kind of, again, I did a whole chat about the mystique, you know what I mean? It's like what you remember about things, and then when you go back and you watch or you read the hockey news like I've been doing, it does take away the mystique of what you remember because it really spells out what happened. And sometimes like, oh, I don't know if I wanted to know that, because it takes away the charm of it all,
Oh, sure.
So.
Sure, rose-colored glasses. I hope Mattel pays Dan Bouchard royalties for being the living Kendall.
He does look like him, doesn't he?
The first time that I played the Flames in that replay, it doesn't really matter who it was, and his picture popped up on the card and go, that's Ken.
Yeah.
Right, to the plastic molded hair, and that's. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, it was living Kendall.
Yeah, he was. What's been fun about this rabbit hole here is, you get on, you're looking at different teams and the whole bit, and you see where players went. And I know I do that when I unbox Payoff Pitch, and I'm going through the teams. I'm like, holy cow, Reggie Jackson's on this team, or like Rick Burleson's playing with the Angels. It was just, oh, I didn't realize this guy's over here. So it just, and that could be a whole other show topic. Is we remember our past. I don't want to call them heroes, but our sports stars, and you associate them with a certain team. And then you find out that they played for different teams, and it's like,
Right.
I just don't really picture this guy wearing this jersey. That's not how I associate him.
Now, in the Retro Sports Network replays for baseball, they're all as played. Just easier to do it that way. So yesterday I had the second half of the doubleheader was the Yankees and the Blue Jays from Toronto. The DH for the Yankees was Jose Cruz.
Wow.
Who I never knew played outside of Houston. Now, his son played for the Jays, Jose Cruz Jr. and the Mariners, but we're all just kind of looking and seeing Cruz there, and it pops up, and it's like, that's Jose Cruz. I didn't remember that in any way, shape, or form. And so it's like Unitas with the Chargers, and like there's actually a whole thread on one of the hockey forums that I go to. Did you can't picture this player in that picturing this player in that uniform, like, or with the Hawks and all that. But yeah, Jose Cruz was the DH for the Yankees in the early part of '88.
That's interesting. It is fun seeing where players go towards the end of their career. The rabbit hole I was going down, I was following some of the Blackhawks teams because the North Stars played the Blackhawks quite a bit in the playoffs in these videos. So I was like, okay, who was the goalie there? I remember Murray Bannerman and Esposito, and like, when did Esposito hang him up and Murray Bannerman come in? I didn't realize that Ed Johnston from the Bruins, who was the 1-2 punch with Cheevers for many years in the early 70s, that in the late 70s, he ended up finishing his career with the Chicago Blackhawks. He played 4 games with the Blackhawks. I didn't know that. So I don't know if he's carded on that season in a couple of games. I'll have to take a look because he only played the 4 games. And then I think the next year he ended up coaching the team. So it was kind of like, that's, again, you learn some of these things by playing these games. It's like, I didn't realize that.
It was when I was playing 54-55 when I got the new version of Action PC Hockey. But we'll talk about that when we get to how we get bored. Gump Worsley was the goalie for the Rangers.
Oh, now, back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the picture of Gump is when he's late 30s, early 40s, and looks like he's just finished his shift down at the steel mill. But it's like, really? Wow.
Yeah, he did. I think he went from the Rangers to the Canadians and then to the North Stars to wind up his career, something like that.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, so interesting stuff we have going on here. All right, so let's get to our topic of the day, and we'll read off some of the answers here we have from the community. Here we go. All right, so we are talking about, the question was, do you get bored? And I prefaced that, or I continued on with the question, with either a project, a team, a player, or a season, or anything else. Okay, it doesn't have to be necessarily one particular thing. Maybe you get bored with a game, or maybe you're playing a season that's not going well, or just whatever it is. Do you ever get bored? That was the question we threw out
let
there.
me start by answering that, and then you can give you my own answer, and then if it comes up again in the question responses, oops. Yes, I think that you get kind of any game you play a lot is going to have its flaws become available, or you get down the rabbit holes or whatever. Ooh, shiny thing, or ooh, shiny thing for that. And so one of the reasons why I started Retro Sports Network was that if I finally shared something I was doing with people, it would kind of force me to want to finish it. Well, here we are. We're doing our 6th baseball season with that. But yes, after the newness wears off, something, and I don't want to go too far because I know some of the responses, we'll just kind of go, nope, time to do something else, time to try something else, whether it's a performance or a flaw or what have you. But except for the football projects, and I can talk about that at some other point through this, but yeah, primarily was I need to start finishing some of these things. Let me start to share them, and that will make me do it.
Well, you play a lot of Action PC baseball, and that's your bread and butter, and you stream a lot of that in the whole bit. But at the same time, you'll do that for your streaming, and you got your season that you play through for the next 6 or 8 months or whatever it is. But that's not all you're doing though. You're playing hockey on the side. Sometimes a new game will come up, and we'll play that there, or you'll play something completely odd that you haven't played in a while, just to kind of get a one-up. So I mean, you're constantly dipping the chicken fingers in different sauces over there.
It is not. That's all I do is play Action PC baseball.
Yeah, so you do.
In fact, I'll even tell you that outside of that streaming thing, I don't play Action PC baseball for anything else.
I would say, if you're doing that constantly in the stream, you probably want to.
I play other baseball games again. Played for me too, but yes.
Alrighty, so let's read some of the response here. From our Discord, we'll start with our Patreons, as we like to do. So we have our Turbocharged Sports says, so far, I've never gotten bored with a project, a game, or season, etc. He goes, I have too many options, as in too many games, seasons, and sports. And he lists a bunch of sports that he has. And as a Libra? Is that like a cat?
No, Libra as in an astrological sign.
Oh, I thought he was a cat. I didn't know. Okay. I usually
he probably is, but in this case, we're talking about Libras.
I usually have a difficult time not bouncing around from game to game. When I do dive into a product, if I get derailed, it's because real life intervenes and I don't have the time or the energy to stick with it, but never by boredom or dissatisfaction with the product.
I think to add to that, I think we've all kind of gotten old enough to know we know what our ponies are as far as what we want to do, and so maybe as we get older and have played these games and know where we want to go, it's kind of like going to the bookstore and getting that really good book. Now it may be a piece of crap and you don't want to finish it, but I think the older we get, I think the more we can narrow our focus and go, this is what I want to do. So I can see where he's coming from.
Yeah, and he just finishes up by saying, to date, I've never had a dissatisfying project regardless of the ultimate results. So,
that's good.
Yeah. Let's see, the pesky poll. I play mostly baseball season projects. Yes, I get bored, which is why I play more than one season at a time, and I make them very different seasons. For example, I am doing 1954 and 1982. Both baseball, but very different baseball.
Very different.
That's how I keep from getting bored. That's a good idea, too, is to do the different seasons. Yep.
It's important to keep things fresh.
Yep.
And again, there's also no expiration date on when a project needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Tommy Ballgame. I echo the sentiments above. My style of play is only Cubs seasons replays. And I never get bored, but I will take a short hiatus as things come up. Right now, I am remodeling my master bathroom and doing it myself. Oh, boy. Yeah, that's a project and a half. I know when my cellar went. Yeah, it took me away from things, you know. But he says, since that's the main focus right now, games are on hold. But next game, lineups, pitching matchups never go away in his thoughts. Bored? Heck no. A little break in between for sure. But even though I only play baseball and don't have the fallback of hockey or football, etc., the fun of the bathroom project is just about done, and it's time to get back to my routine.
Nice.
Adirondack Gus says, I do get bored, but mainly because of the game engine. And
Yes.
it's usually if it's computer-based. I feel sometimes it's just sit and click, having to look up the results on a chart keeps me motivated. That's an interesting thing. The game engine, do you get bored with a particular game and then have to go do something else?
I will say this, Baseball Max, which we tried the beta for, I think you either feel a connection to a game or you don't. And because all you were doing is clicking, and I think they're working on trying, before they gets super released, and trying to change that to a degree, it just felt cold. And so I completely get where he gets with that. Everyone wants to have a different level of involvement with what they do, but yeah, if all you're doing is just, hitting the forward button, yeah, you're going to get bored pretty quick.
I enjoyed it. I just found that I didn't really enjoy playing on my phone as much as I thought I would.
Yeah.
I'm just not a mobile gamer. I mean, again, I'll sit in a doctor's office. I'll play a quick game of cribbage or something like that, but it's in, it's out. It's not a project. It's just a one-off thing to kill a few minutes. But I find that, I don't like to sit and play too much on my phone for very long.
Yeah.
So, let me see. Jam920 says, I generally don't get bored with a project because I get fixated on seeing it to the end. Sometimes after I'm done, I do need a break from that game or sport. Yep, that makes sense. Playing replays with the PC games allows me to easily follow along every team and player and can jump into different teams and games, which helps me keep things fresh. And that's a big key when you're playing on the PC, is to have a game and a game engine that will simulate other games. So
yes,
you're playing the games that you want, but you're part of the season because the computer is playing all the games for everybody else. I'm looking at you inside sports games. I really am. I love your games, but I'm not going to play every single game in a season, and that's what prevents me from playing your games a lot of the time.
And because of that, with a computer, you can see those surprises start to develop and kind of adjust accordingly. Yep. I mean, that's what they do for the baseball. We're like, oh, this team is starting to take off, or oh, wow, yeah. And so there's always a surprise around every corner.
Yep. David C., I typically don't get bored with a project, but end up losing the time I set aside either to work or family. That's my biggest frustration with projects. I'm just not at the point in my life where they can take priority. Yep, so family and life gets in the way. Yep, so he's not bored, but things get in the way. Alan says, I rarely get bored with a project, but I can lose patience with games that just take too long to play, like second season football and replay basketball. It's hard to complete a single season team replay when each game takes 2 hours. It's always easier to go back to cards and dice baseball games where I can juggle multiple projects at the same time. That's
But time is certainly a reason, and it is something that we all invest. And you need to get a return on your investment. And so if you know that you're half asleep when you start and it's going to take you 2 hours, chances are.
Yeah, that's why a game with a companion is the best of both worlds, whether it's Digital Diamond or Strat or Replay. Those are games that you can input the results and will sim any game that you want. That is really the way to go, is so you can play as many or as few games as you want, but you're still in that overall replay. And he makes a good point about, games that take a couple of hours. I sit down myself the other day. I want to play some hockey. Do I want to pull out Hockey Bones or APA? No. I'm going to pull out Stone Cold, and I'm going to play a game of Stone Cold in 5 or 10 minutes. And it's not going to take me a long time to set it up either. It all depends on what you're looking to do. But yeah, and again, baseball games go pretty quick, and you play the whole thing. That's what's great about baseball games. Let me see. Mark says, I've never gotten bored with a project. In fact, if anything, it's the opposite. I tend to get energized and want to see it play out as quickly as I can. Recently ran a 64-team great baseball teams from the 20s to the 90s using Action PC Baseball.
Oh, he had a great time with that, too.
Yeah, which included 3, 5, and 7-game series. I auto-played a few until the late rounds, but still managed to finish the whole thing in less than 2 weeks. Wow, that's pretty good. What I do get bored with sometimes is the game engine of a particular game. I mostly play PC, and some of the games, while fantastic, come down to a lot of pointing and clicking on certain areas or numbers to get the results. When that happens, I move on to something else. So, so there's another thing we can add there about.
I just think that sometimes you're just in the mood, as you say, to kick your feet back and have someone do the work for you. And I think others, it's, no, I need to be more involved somehow.
Yep. Now, he adds here, he goes, maybe including ideas on what can be done to relieve boredom could be helpful. For me, not just blindly replaying a season, but digging a bit deeper. Reading a book or some online material can help make the experience more interesting and exciting. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now with the WHA and the 70s hockey. I watched a whole bunch of videos, and I'm reading hockey news articles and that book again about the WHA, and it just brings everything to life. He goes, I'm currently replaying the 73 NHL season using Action PC Hockey and found some great stuff on YouTube featuring the 73 Rangers. Helped me breathe life into pictures and skating icons. I didn't really know any of the players. Now I feel like I do. Also, creating unique and interesting tournaments can get you out of a game funk. Do a quick double elimination tournament and replay basketball or a Battle of the Fatzos. Does anybody use Fatso anymore? He says, entitled about Legends of Boxing PC. yeah. So
wow, it's been a long time since I played Hungry Hippos, Mark. But
I love Hungry Hippos.
But those are good things to do. I've actually tried to find some Canadians and Islander games from that particular season just to see what combinations I should be playing online. And the computer does a pretty good job of doing that. But yeah, I think the more, as you've done with the hockey news, the more you become and, do the research and becomes more than just the pixels on a screen, the more enthused you're going to be to do whatever it is that you're doing.
Let's see. Pesky Paul actually adds here, too. He says, one of the ways I get interest back in my project or to keep interest is to read a book about that season as he plays. He goes, I'm doing that with my 1954 seasons. For modern seasons, I watch some games on YouTube. And then Mitch responded to him. He goes, I totally concur with Pesky Paul. When I'm doing a replay, I'll read all I can about that year, both in sports and in history. Researching the project was one of my favorite was one of my all-time favorite history. Okay.
Nice.
Researching the project is what he was getting at. And then GM 920 responds, because I completely agree. If the replay is tied into a book, a film, or special nostalgic factor, it goes a long way. Yep. And then Mark responds back and says, I had no idea who Ed Jackman or Brad Parker were until I started this replay. And he said he was,
oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
two of my favorite Rangers, and he said he was even born and raised in Brooklyn. He wasn't aware of that, So,
here's my Brad Park story.
Mm-hmm.
Someone picked up from a library sale Brad Park's ghostwritten autobiography in the mid 70s, and it must never have been taken out because I got it in the late 70s, and hockey was pretty foreign to me at that point. But in the book were ads where the pictures would be. You know how books have different color color or picture sections. In Park's printing of that paperback, there were ads instead of pictures. They were just like Marlboro and stuff like that. Like a magazine. It was wasn't the world's thickest paperback book, but that was my introduction to Brad Park.
Yeah, I think I have his book. He wrote a book, and I forget what it was called, but I think I have the book.
Yeah, I think he wrote it just after he was traded from the Rangers to the Bruins. But
I loved him in New York. I loved him in Boston. I really do. All righty. So on Facebook, and our Facebook group, which is Digital to Dice over on Facebook, an upcoming topic is going to be, do you get bored, is what I wrote. And I asked the same question here. And John writes back, and he says, all the time. so he gets bored all the time.
He's honest about it.
Yeah. Mike from the truck responds back and says, yes, this may be why I quick sim or quick play games sometimes, to hit the spot a little bit more, because it's over sooner than later. You got your results, and it feels more satisfying that it's done. The downside is it may not have all the bells and whistles of a full-played game, stats and drama, etc. So there can be a trade-off. So
you know what I haven't heard mentioned, and maybe it's coming, is that the team you're doing for the project isn't doing as well as you had hoped. I don't know if that's coming up, but for me, that's always like, oops, no, we're not even going to come close.
Oh, yeah. No, I had that when I was doing my my Red Sox 86 Clemens replay with Strat PC Baseball. And they were getting hammered. They were 22 games out. And it was tough to finish that replay, not because they weren't going to win it all, but just because of how bad they were.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay,
it's
like, I got to stick this out just to see how Clemens did and compare it to real life. And that's where I am with the payoff pitch replay. It's the same thing. He's 4-2 instead of 6-0. Sox I think they actually snuck into second place using Digital Diamond to simulate all the games that I'm not playing. But yeah, it's been disappointing, because you're taking a team that went to the World Series and boy, they are really struggling. So I can think that if you're playing one team or one player and they're playing bad, that maybe not so much bored, but frustration. And then you're just like, well.
Yeah, I think that frustration leads to boredom.
And then you're like, there's something else
you're not going to match.
I'd rather play something else if this is how this is going to go. It's not like watching a movie. I was watching a movie the other day, and it wasn't going anywhere. And I'm like, boy, the cover art looked good and the description looked good. This movie is just not going anywhere. And after 10 or 15 minutes, I just turned it off. I was like, okay, you didn't do anything for me. I don't know what was going on here. So I'm going to go find a movie that's going to capture my attention,
The Sorority Sisters of Peoria was about the nuns from the convent after all.
Yeah, I kind of figured that out after 15 minutes. Curtis writes in and says, yes, in fact, I'm struggling to finish my 1941 baseball replay. Interesting, yeah. Yeah, so he's having trouble there with 1941 in his baseball.
I mean, it's really, if you're doing like a macro top-down replay like that, and who you want to win isn't winning, or the player you're rooting for 41, maybe DiMaggio struggles, or whatever. Yeah, as soon as whatever, I mean, we talk about this in one-off games, where you expect something to happen. The Aaron game where he was supposed to hit 715 and he went 0 for 4. Or what have you. Yeah, once you know that whatever it is that you want to have happen can't happen.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah. Joe writes in and says, too many times. Well, the good thing is, Joe, is that we have so many games to choose from that if you get bored with one, there are others to play.
Oh, there's endless.
Yeah, John writes in and says, constantly. He goes, I have to move from replay to stay fresh and motivated. I probably dropped my 1986 replay in MLB 3 times for a week or two, then picked it back up. He goes, I got to June in 77 and dropped it to pick up 1994 for a while. So he's playing some long baseball seasons, and after a while, he's got to move on to something else because, yeah, he was bored with what he was playing.
It's interesting that the Discord, by and large, said they don't get bored. And everything you've read off so far from the Facebook group is that they do get bored. Yeah. Just putting it out there.
Now, here's one guy, Marco Scola. I don't know if you ever heard of him or not. Name sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says, yes, I have. Most of the time, I think it's due to interest in a different game or results aren't playing out like I hoped. Many times I get 4 or 5 weeks into a season and my team is horrible, or it's the start of a different season in real life that inspires me to play something else. So I think he just checked all the boxes right here. It's, I see a different game. Look at the shiny keys over there, squirrel.
Exactly.
Yep. Or the results aren't turning out like you had hoped or like you were expecting. So there's another box checked off. The team is horrible. Yep. There's another box to check off. Or you get some inspiration from something else that wants you to play something else. There's four boxes he just checked.
And the other one he mentioned, quite a chunk of people play was currently being played in season. So if you start that basketball project in May and you get to the finals, well, basketball season's over. You're more tempted to play baseball or football. Mm-hmm. You play what you see a lot of.
Yep. Richard says, yes, I was playing APA football. Instead of playing entire season, I stopped after 12 games and went to the playoffs.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the way to do it. Okay, let's just finish this up. Tony writes in and says, all the time. So yeah, it is kind of funny how the Facebook people are a little bit more bored with their stuff than the Discord and the Patreons.
I would say for football, because I've started some football projects that I'm never going to finish, it is of the big four, although I maybe watch one NBA game a year. Football is the one of the big four that I like the least. And because a full play football game does take so long to play that I tend to get bored rather quickly if the game gets out of hand, or if I have to do more than a half hour or so of hard thinking, such as rolling all the dice in Strat or that. Now, at that 30, 45-minute mark, if the game's almost done, like in 2nd and 10, then I'll push through. But yeah, a football project is probably the most likely one I would abandon for boredom as to the other four.
Yeah, but it's not your game.
It's not my game.
It's not your game, so yeah, I can see that. Jim writes in. He says, yes, I do a team replay for Strat Baseball on the computer, but tell myself there is no rush. Mixing in smaller projects helps with being bored, which this show made me feel okay doing, and that I wasn't cheating on my replay. I don't know, Jim. Maybe you are cheating on the replay.
Depends. Do they want alimony? Then you're fine.
Yeah.
No, and again,
he goes on to say, longer projects I will do on the computer, smaller ones on the board. I figured out that this is my style to complete things, which is key. And that's a smart thing right there, is knowing your style and knowing what you're going to do and not setting unrealistic expectations and goals for yourself. I'm the same way. Longer products on the computer, smaller ones on the tabletop. Yeah, I would actually agree with that. Taking a break and rediscovering the replay again is okay, so you never really quit doing one if you start another. I got bored doing my 98 replay playing Cubs and Cards, and I got bored doing the 98 playing Cubs and Cards in my 21 replay, but got into August and storylines developed and had helped me pick up my interest and got them done with some breaks. So he had some good stuff there. Let's see now. Kurt writes in, too many distractions, new games, creative innovations by other gamers, game videos, etc., etc., etc. Back in the day, there were not nearly as many distractions, so it was easy to remain focused and dedicated to a product and a game engine. Today, we have an overload of information available to easily distract us along with our not-so-simple lifestyle we tend to lead today. That right there. That's it right there. That kind of sums up everything about our gaming. And we talked about the golden age of gaming and how wonderful it is. Kurt hits it right on the head. Too many distractions, and not necessarily it's not a bad thing to have a lot of new games and, like I say, creative innovations by other gamers, game videos, and the monkey see, monkey do, and P-Jet's now playing Inside the Crease. I need to play Inside the Crease because I love that game, and things like that. And so, that's what it is. You're right. I mean, back in the day, before I played this stuff, before the internet, you pulled out Strat or App or a replay or whatever you had, and you played it. And you didn't know who else was playing this. And now you get on the internet and you see all these people playing these games and newer games and, different versions of the game and new seasons and updated seasons. And yeah.
It's like for PJ, it's like walking into a food court and you might have the same 3 or 4 restaurants. You might have the Taco Bell and the Burger King right there, but the new salad place has opened up. Like, I got to go try that.
Yeah. And John responded to him. He goes, so true. He goes, I started Strat in 1964 when I was 15. It was probably 15 years before I tried another game.
I think a lot of that has happened within the last 10. When I found the Delphi boards back around the turn of the century, which they tell me was 24 years ago now.
Oh, my gosh. Isn't it 24 years ago? Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2024.
Ooh.
It makes me feel old. That it pretty much was when people would write about what they were playing, it was only game A, game B, game C, and maybe you'd see game D or game E. And now we are Golden Corralling it. We all have, we still have games that we prefer to play or go through in the virtual, whatever brings you comfort. But I know at least on my channel, I have featured 8 or 9 different sports in a year, and let alone how many different games in those sports. It's just so easy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the age of Amazon. Oh, you want that? You can have it in 3 days. Or if you live in a major metropolitan area, don't shoot down the drone that's bringing your popcorn.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, exactly right.
So absolutely. And the other thing is, too, going back to I never played anything for 15 years and et cetera. I don't do this stuff. I mean, obviously there's some nostalgia involved. You're more comfortable with the players from whatever era that is. But when there was less of this stuff on and around, and all you had was your local paper wherever you grew up, stuff was more special. Saturday afternoons were more special. Keith Jackson doing a football game in October was special. Today, I can watch high school whatevers from pretty much anyone that streams on YouTube. I can watch it.
Yeah. We were talking this morning at the hockey rink, Ron, about on Facebook. I'll get a notification every now and then about I think it's like a music thing, and it's like here were the top hits in 1972,
right?
And you know them all. I mean, or at least 90% of them. It's like I've heard this, I've heard that, and so we were talking about that this morning. It's like this keeps popping up in my feed, and Hall & Oates come up, and this come up, and I forget what year it was, but I mean, it's like Diana Ross. It's like we know all these songs, and it's amazing how we know all these songs, and nowadays I couldn't tell you what the top 10 songs were.
It's grossly unfair to today's artists who work some of them work just as hard.
And the point the person made, he goes, well, look what you had back then. Back then, you just had a couple of channels on the radio, and everything funneled through that. Or you had, Dick Clark on TV, and he'd have some bands on. But back then, everything was kind of streaming through that one or 2 channels that you listen to. And now, look what you got now. Not only do you have the FM radio, you got the satellite radio, you got YouTube and Spotify and Amazon Music and Apple Music and, anywhere you can stream from. And, me and you could write a song and be streaming it out there as well. So, I mean, you're getting music from 100 different sources now.
Exactly.
And so now it's like, what is the top 10? In fact, I'll hear that, once in a while I'll have the radio on. It's like, and here's the top 10 this week. And I won't know any of them.
There's not to sidetrack because I don't know how many more of these you got to read. Noah Kahn. I wouldn't know him from Adam. He grew up in Vermont.
Was that the guy from Star Trek?
No, that was the Wrath of Khan, and after he got over his fine Corinthian leather fetish and his fantasy island, I think that he settled down for a life of being Anyway, he did a concert here in town, which a lot of people went to, and he played Saratoga, which is the premier northeast concert venue in the summertime. It's your Tanglewood, so it's a mix of classical and pop and country acts. And my nieces love him now. They're 16, 17 years old. So that's they're going to look at this age and go, this is what they think the best music on the planet is, just because of their age. He did Saturday Night Live this year. I mean, I couldn't pick out, if you played a song, I wouldn't know it was him.
Right.
I might like it and get put on one of my playlists. But I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about. I mean, this guy has done everything right, and he is on a pretty much a meteoric rise to do that. But I wouldn't know him from Adam.
It's such a different world. We get things from so many sources, and you're right. I mean, you play Strat forever, and you wouldn't even think about anything else,
Right.
Let me see here. Continue on. Terry says, on a question about getting bored, he goes, no, because I have 3 or 4 going on at the same time, and I switch after every series. Yep, that's another good thing. Gary says, he goes, I do quite often, but I usually either start another project and bounce back and forth between them, and also sometimes play a game in another genre, like an RTS or a flight sim.
Yep.
That's really good to shake it up, is to leave the sports world and go play something else, a war game or a flight sim or a video game. Yeah, that does shake it up.
Cleanse the palate, clear your mind, get your mind working.
Let me see. Jeffrey Mills writes in, he goes, I don't know about bored, but he goes, I've gotten frustrated with OOTP, with injuries, and the AI making some moves he makes him scratch his head in a whole bit. So he seemed like he was frustrated with the game, not so much bored with the game.
But frustration with game engines, and every game has something that's going to frustrate you, just kind of leads you to stop because, I got to go do this and deal with that, and then you're moving on to something else.
Yeah. Glenn writes in, bored. He goes, never been bored, but maybe wanted a project or two to hurry up and get over with, but never bored. Mike writes in and says, I think everyone at some point in a replay becomes bored and will jump to another project for a while. You just get tired of the same names, especially if there isn't a great pennant race. Yeah.
Right.
Let's see. Derek writes in and says, I hate to admit it, but I think my 80s Great League and shootout hockey falls in that category. He goes, it seemed like a great idea at the time. First year I had a good pace with it, but now I just can't seem to maintain my enthusiasm for it. I'll get it out and play it for a few days, but then before you know it, the game will sit on the shelf for a month or two before I get back to the project. Mm-hmm. I'm guilty of that all the time, Derek, is I'll pull out a game and I'll have a project and I'll play 1 or 2 games, and then I need to go do something else. And it doesn't mean I won't go back to that project. I have so many that are sitting here, and I'm aware of them all pretty much. And some I've only played 1 game. Some I played, 10 or 12 or 20 games. All depends on what the project is. But I hear what you're saying. Sometimes you play something and you get distracted and you put it on the shelf and, you're like, man, I enjoyed that. Why didn't I finish that? And then you go back to it and you play a couple games. And sometimes it just, you do a project or whatever it is you're doing and it seemed like a good idea at the time. And you start playing it and you have some fun, but not enough to keep your interest, and then it just kind of sits there, and then you think about it, and you're like, do I really want to go back to that? I wasn't having a lot of fun. It's not what I thought it was going to be. And so then you're just like, yeah, I think I'm going to go do something else. Todd writes in, sometimes I currently am replaying 67, 68, 69, and 72 with PC Replay Baseball and 91 with Action PC Baseball. I usually jump from season to season until one gets close to finishing, then I focus on that one season. So, yeah, there's that. Robert writes in and just said no. And I don't think there's anything after that, just N and O. So he doesn't get bored. Good for him. Joseph writes in, he goes, I got bored about a month in. I always try to have a few going, and switching off more often has helped me keep up momentum without abandoning completely. Bobby writes in, not bored so much as attention deficit. There's always seems to be that other game, that other matchup, that other project that looks so much fun. Yep, that's another good one there. This other guy here, Gilles Thibault. No, I don't really know him.
I hear his closets get very messy.
Yeah, he sounds like a messy guy. Just like stuff just thrown everywhere and out of order. That's just
Messy Marvin. He's got to be careful or his next thing will shoot his eye out.
He says yes. When I replayed 1993 NL, the top two teams, Phillies and Giants cards, were way better than any other teams. There was no chance they would be caught, causing the last month to be an agonizing slog of meaningless.
Such a slog if you get to the end and there's nothing to play for. Yeah,
meaningless Marlins versus Padres type games. Yep. So Tebow get bored. Yep. Dave writes in. He goes, "I don't get bored, but like Kurt states, I get distracted with other stuff. I mostly get distracted by computer games. It's so easy just to fire up a computer game and jump right in. Cards and dice, you need the setup, card shuffling, lineups, prep work for scorekeeping, etc. It might be the case of being a bit lazy on some days, and it's just easier to play in a computer game." Yep. And John responds him, "Been there, done that for sure." So that is kind of the feedback we got on.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd get quite that much feedback on that, and it was all over the place. But at the same time, it wasn't all over the place.
There's some very common things: game engines, results, attention spans. I mean, yeah, and again, some people who just know that when they started, they've done enough of these things to know that that's what they want to do when they're going to finish it.
So if I had to answer that question, I would just say all of the above. All the boxes that were checked off here with people in the Discord and people on Facebook.
Marco's answers seem to be probably the best summary of it all.
He covered everything. Yeah, I mean, the idea, and the other people saying how, life gets in the way, so you don't necessarily get bored, but other things take priority. Maybe you play a game for a bit and you thought it was going to be all that, and it kind of wasn't. Maybe the first game didn't go well, or it just wasn't what you thought. Again, the idea that we have so many games to play, the golden age of gaming. A new game will come out, or like the play games. All of a sudden, they start releasing these express versions of their game, so it's basically like a new game.
Get a second look at a game you might have done.
Game
that you may have put away.
So it's like I have a whole bunch of seasons. I'm going to pull it out and play. Now I'm playing that now. So for me, it's like you sit at the restaurant and your food comes. Like, oh man, this looks good. And then you look across the table at your wife and you're like, what do you got? And it doesn't matter. You could have the big juiciest steak, but you're like, what do you got? And then you look at the table next to you and it's like, oh man.
Oh, they got the scampi too.
It's like, that looks good. And you look at the other tables, like, and you call the waitress over and you go, what's that? And like, oh, that's the triple combo. And you're like, oh, next time I need to get that. So
yeah, exactly.
I think there's a lot of that going on with me. That it's just I have so many games to play. I enjoy playing them. I don't know if I would say I get bored per se, but I think the allure of playing something different is what I do.
I think today it's harder to hold someone's attention. And so maybe it's not strictly bored with, oh, ho hum, I'm pulling Strat out again to do game 3 of this series, but like, oh, just as you said, what I'll have what she's having over there or what have you, just because it is. There's so much out there. And again, there's so much out there at our fingertips that was just never there before.
Yeah, it's just, somebody maybe retires or something happens. You're like, no, now I got to go play that team. Or like I say, you sit there on YouTube one night because you just don't want to play. You're tired, you don't want to play anything. You sit on YouTube, and now it's like, oh man, I see all these North Stars and Blackhawks playoffs games, and now I got to go play some of these things now. And just, WHA come up. Now I'm playing WHA. So yeah, there's so many outside distractions that just in your daily life, just going about your daily life, and it's you put on satellite radio and I'm just listening to the football preview and it's like, hey, let's bring on whoever from Drew Bledsoe. Talk us about the first couple games with the Patriots, and you're like, oh, now I want to go play a Drew Bledsoe game, So no matter where you go, there's distractions and influences that just kind of get your mind spinning about, geez, I want to go play these guys now, because it is fun what we do. It's so fun is putting stuff on the table or on the PC and seeing these guys from the past and playing our favorite teams and our favorite players. That's what we do, and that's what it's all about. And it's almost like you can't get enough of it, is what it really comes down to. And that's why I have a hard time sticking with something, because like I say, I'm sitting at the table and I might have the biggest, juiciest steak with a lobster tail on my table, but I'm looking around to see what everybody else is eating, because I want to know how that is, That's just
one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of doing just simply playoffs, although that's what I did in my off season. Because if everything has all the marbles on the table every time you go to play, you get bored of it. If everything has these extreme consequences, if they don't win, the series is over or whatever, it's hard to build that excitement or keep that excitement going. It's one of the reasons why I enjoy doing the longer regular season projects and build to it to the crescendo.
We talked about that when we talked about the quick play games, Ron.
Right.
Where we said the quick play games or the highlight games are fun because you get all the action bundled up in a little ball.
Exactly.
The problem is like you said, everything is an action sequence, and it's do or die at that point. You don't get the build up. You don't get the drop passes or the 1 yard runs or the shots that are blocked or the pop outs to first base. I mean, if you skip all that and just get to the action every time, you don't have that build up. And we talked about that when we talked about quick play and highlight games, is that they are really good and they're really fun.
Oh, they certainly scratch an itch. But
at the same time, when you're playing a game, whatever game it is, and you're getting the mundane things that happen in a game, when those special things happen, they're so much more special than if you get them all the time because you're doing a highlight game.
Even if you do the mundane games, such as Minnesota and Montreal, or like I do in the long season replays, those games in April and May, they count just as much as the ones in August and September, but you don't know what story you're going to be getting into. You get some guy that hits Mario Mendoza, who walked off a game a few years ago against the Dodgers on the stream. Now, Mendoza, known for not being a good hitter, and here he does that. And then that will stick in your head, and they become a favorite player of yours. I'll tell a real quick story. I know we've run way over. Playing the Strat Draft League in college, and I'm behind in the late innings. And if you've ever watched me do an Andy Van Slyke game, you hear me call him Thumper, which is not his. I don't know what his nickname is, but we called him Thumper in college because he was with the Pirates in the Draft League and just playing, just a regular season game against a buddy. He hit a homer. He pulled the Ryan Sandberg. He hit the homer in the eighth to tie to make it a one-run game, and then he today would have walked it off. He won the ball game, and so it's those things there, which I think are underappreciated by people doing longer projects. Like, well, what is he? He's a thumper. He thumped his way to a win, and they become people that you root for. Kind of like you when you met Reggie Leach there, or some of those SEALs or whatever it is, and like, and again, I think that kind of takes care of some of the boredom when something kind of unexpected happens. It doesn't need to be the rare play, but really, you got a hat trick out of Rick Green, or Dennis Rodman scored 25. Something out of the ordinary that you get that just kind of revitalizes your interest.
Yeah. Yeah. So we want to thank everybody that chimed in. Holy cow, yeah, we ran over today, but we had so much feedback.
Yeah.
We wanted to get it all in. So you guys take the time to provide us the feedback, and I thought it'd be fun to read them all off here. And
thank you so much, yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea that we would get this much feedback just on a question like that, but we got some fantastic answers. We really did. It was a good read. Thanks for everybody for doing that. All right, before we sign off, we do have our 3 stars of the week here for episode 211. So here we go. Our 3rd star, we all know him, Bernie Strom.
Woohoo!
Bernie, thank you so much for supporting the show.
He's loving that 1914 Red Sox team, by the way.
Oh, he's having a blast with that stuff.
Yeah, he really is.
I try to follow along the best I can with some of the stuff on our Discord. There's a lot of it to follow, but some of it's just really kind of interesting. It depends on the day too. Sometimes I got a little bit more time than other days to follow some things, But anyway, our number 2 star, D. Scott Howard.
Yay!
Thank you, D. Scott, so much for supporting the show and YouTube and all that other fun stuff there. And then our number 1 star, again in no particular order. He got some good feedback in here today on our show. Mark Unger.
Yes.
Is our number one star of the day here in episode
Seasons
211.
1 and 2 of Thespian, by the way, you can watch for free on YouTube.
Oh, nice. Really? You're on YouTube now, huh?
Yeah.
Nice. A couple of things coming up here in the show. We don't have one author. We have two authors scheduled to join us. And we're trying to get them on for a Saturday night chat like we like to do. However, my hockey broadcast schedule is just crazy, especially on Saturdays, probably through February. There might be one Saturday night in February, but I might want to just take that off and just kind of chill out. But we do have some authors, one on baseball and one on basketball.
On basketball.
Yeah, so we're going to have some great discussions with that.
The basketball one, a college professor who wrote about the Knicks of the late 70s. I would think the Knicks in the Bernard King era, I think, is what we're going to get into. And he's actually a game player, too. So looking forward to having him on.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to have I love talking to the authors about the books that they write.
Aren't they fun?
They're some of my favorite things, is aside from the game developers, which are fun, too. But having people on that wrote books and just their experience writing books.
Randy. Wasn't she just an absolute blast?
Randy was great, yep. She is. She almost come on New Year's Eve, too. She goes,
oh really?
She goes, I saw this late. She goes, I was out and about. She goes, if I was around, I definitely would have come on. So,
that was awesome.
Yeah, we'll have her back at some point. I'm thinking about a hockey show around playoff time, and we'll get some of our, the P Jets on and some of our hockey gurus on. See if we can coax Peter Miller out of YouTube retirement. Love talking to Peter Miller. He's a great guy. But we'll see about getting a little hockey chat going here as we get into the hockey playoffs in April or something like that. But anyway, so we got some two authors coming up. As soon as my schedule settles down, I'm actually going to be at rinks. I'm going to be at the rink tomorrow at one rink at 7 a.m. for 3 hours, come home, put on my tie, and go to another rink for 9 hours.
You got triple. You're doing 3 games tomorrow? You calling 3 games tomorrow?
I get three games tomorrow, and then I got to go back on Sunday for one. Yeah. So we're in busy season now. It's just go. So I'm trying to get my rest and not get sick and lose my voice so I can do all these games. And it's been fun. It's really been a fun year. So look for that coming up soon. We'll try to give plenty of heads up once I figure out my schedule and we can get the authors on to talk about their upcoming books. But I'm pretty excited about that.
Absolutely.
To get them on the show. All right, so let's wrap up an extended episode here, episode 211. Here we go. So you've been listening to the Digital to Dice podcast, episode 211. We talked about, do you get bored? And we had a terrific community feedback episode. I think these are some of my favorite episodes, is when we have the community chime in and we get the pulse of what's going on with them and see what's going on with the community, because that's what we like to do. We like to talk about what's going on in the community. And so anyway, ways to get a hold of us. digitaltodice.com is the website. 978-751-DICE is the text line. digitaltodice@yahoo.com is the email. And over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. And if you'd like to be a Patreon of ours and help support the show, patreon.com/digitaltodice. For $5 a month, you can jump into our Discord, and we have some terrific chats going on in there, and we tend to read a lot of the Discord stuff here from our Patreons on the channel. That takes, obviously, the priority, is what we like to do, and we bounce ideas off of them all the time in our Discord. Hey, what do you think about this topic? What about that? Do you have any suggestions for topics? And we get a lot of our stuff from the Patreon people in Discord. So anyway, a couple of things there to think about. And so that'll wrap up episode 211 here at the Digital to Dice. Any final words here, Ron?
That's the 211. You're welcome for the information.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.